My name's Lucas Miller, and at 28, I've always been the guy who finds peace in putting things back together. Whether it's a busted engine or a leaky faucet, fixing stuff has been my therapy since I was a kid growing up in the bustling suburbs of Chicago. 3 months back, I finally scraped together enough for my job as an auto mechanic to buy a modest 2-story townhouse in Elmwood, a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Indianapolis. It's got peeling wallpaper in the hallway, stairs that groan like they're telling ghost stories, and a backyard that's more weeds than grass. But it's mine. No more landlords or shared walls. My folks, after decades of grinding it out in the city, Dad as a factory worker with hands like sandpaper, Mom teaching 3rd grade and preaching about family ties, retired to a cozy cabin in rural Michigan near Lake Huron. They come down every couple of months with apple pies from their orchard and tips on DIY projects, but their days are filled with fishing and book clubs now, far from the urban hustle. I'd been through the ringer before landing here. At 24, I married my college sweetheart, Emily, thinking we'd build that white picket fence dream. But it crumbled when I walked in on her with her old high school flame in our cramped apartment downtown. The betrayal stung like nothing else, and the divorce dragged on for months, leaving me with a beat-up truck, some scars on my heart, and a promise to myself: focus on stability, not fairy tales. That first weekend in Elmwood, I decided to tackle the jungle out back. Armed with gloves and a rusty spade, I dove in, but quickly realized I needed some decent clippers for the thorny bushes. Across the street sat a charming bungalow with a manicured lawn, bursting with tulips and a swing bench under a maple tree. The mailbox said, Laura Bennett. I wiped the sweat from my brow, crossed over, and knocked. Laura opened the door, a woman in her early 30s with a ponytail, jeans, and a pair of reading glasses dangling from her shirt. I stammered about my missing shears, and she chuckled, disappearing inside before returning with a shiny pair. "Make sure you snip just above the bud," she said with a wink. "Helps them grow stronger." I nodded gratefully and swore I'd bring them back by sunset. Those clippers worked wonders, turning my chaotic yard into something resembling order. As the sun dipped low, I returned them, thanking her profusely. "No big deal," she replied, leaning on the doorframe. "Neighbors around here trade favors like baseball cards." I offered to help with anything she needed, figuring she was on her own in that house, single after her parents passed in a highway crash 5 years ago, leaving her their home and some rental properties that gave her financial breathing room to chase her dream as a freelance photographer. It could have ended there, but it didn't. Over the next few weeks, I found myself knocking again, first for a rake to clear leaves, then a sprinkler for the dry patches. Each time, Laura's smile greeted me, and our quick exchanges stretched into real conversations. We'd chat about the weather, then dive into our days, me fixing cars at the shop, her editing photos in her home studio. One humid afternoon, borrowing a wheelbarrow, she teased, "Admit it, Lucas, you're just using this as an excuse to chat." I grinned, caught off guard, but her easy laugh lingered in my mind long after I wheeled it home. That evening, as I sat on my porch with a cold beer, I couldn't shake the thought of her. Our talks evolved naturally. Laura opened up about her work capturing natural landscapes, how she'd lived in Elmwood for years, turning her grief into art after the accident that stole her folks. The properties they left her meant she didn't have to worry about bills, letting her focus on what lit her up. I shared bits of my story, too. Growing up in Chicago's noisy apartments, my parents moved to Michigan for that lakeside serenity. Dad rebuilding old boats, Mom volunteering at the local library, and the raw ache of Emily's infidelity, how the divorce court battles left me rebuilding from scratch. One crisp Sunday, after dropping off the borrowed trowel, Laura invited me inside for iced tea. Her place was inviting, with walls lined in black and white prints and a cozy kitchen smelling of fresh herbs. We sat at the island, talking about everything from Indy 500 races to hole-in-the-wall diners. There was a spark in the air, unspoken but electric. As I headed out, her "catch you later" felt like an invitation to more, A few days on, I showed up empty-handed, proud of the new toolkit I'd picked up at the hardware store. Laura burst out laughing. "Finally independent, huh? Kinda bittersweet." She poured us tea anyway, and we talked for hours, her reminiscing about family road trips to the Great Lakes, me about holiday barbecues in tiny backyards and the fallout from catching Emily red-handed, which sped our split. The next weekend, I invited Laura for a stroll to the little bookshop on Main Street, a quirky spot called Pages and Brew with mismatched armchairs and free coffee. We wandered the aisles, swapping stories about dog-eared paperbacks from our teens, her with Anne of Green Gables, me with old Tom Clancy thrillers Dad left around. Our hands brushed reaching for the same sci-fi novel, and the accidental touch sent a jolt through me. Back on her porch under the glow of a single bulb, I took a chance. "Laura, I don't need to borrow a shovel to want to hang out." Her eyes softened and she nodded. "Good, because I'm running out of tools to lend you." From there, our lives started weaving together like threads in one of Mom's quilts. We'd cook dinner at her place, tacos one night, lasagna the next, laughing over my clumsy chopping skills. I fixed a wobbly rail on her porch. She helped me paint my living room a warm beige. One evening, I left my jacket on her couch and she teased me about marking my territory. By the next visit, she'd stocked my favorite chamomile tea in her pantry, saying, "Just in case you're over." It felt like we were building something, not just fixing fences or trimming hedges. One Saturday, we drove out to Eagle Creek Park just outside Indy for a hike. The trails were alive with autumn's reds and golds, and we talked about everything. Her dreams of photographing the Smoky Mountains, my plans to maybe open my own auto shop someday. She admitted the quiet of her house could feel heavy sometimes, despite the stability her parents' inheritance gave her. I told her about the sting of Emily's betrayal, how finding her with her ex in our apartment had me questioning trust for years. Laura listened, her hand slipping into mine as we walked. "You're not that guy anymore, Lucas," she said. "You're building something real here." Her words hit deep, like she saw the parts of me I'd been piecing back together. Back in Elmwood, our evenings became a rhythm, grabbing burgers at the diner, watching old movies on her couch, or sitting on that swing bench under her maple, splitting a bottle of cheap wine. One night, as stars peeked through the branches, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "This is nice," she whispered. I felt it too, a warmth that wasn't just the wine. I'd spent years after the divorce guarding my heart, but Laura's laugh, her steady presence, was chipping away at those walls. By late October, we were inseparable. I'd bring her coffee from the shop near my garage. She'd leave Post-it notes with silly doodles on my toolbox when she stopped by. One chilly morning, I showed up at her door with 2 mugs of tea, steam curling in the crisp air. "Predictable," she teased, taking hers. "Better than predictable," I shot back. "Reliable." She grinned and we sat on her steps, planning a weekend to plant a small herb garden in her yard. Basil, rosemary, maybe some thyme. I brought my own shears this time, and when we finished, dirt smudged on our hands, she looked at me and said, "Guess I'm out of a job as your tool supplier." I laughed, pulling her close. "You're more than that, Laura." As the leaves turned fully golden, our connection deepened into something undeniable. One evening, after a long day at the garage, I came home to find Laura waiting on my porch with a picnic basket. "Let's head to the park," she said, her eyes bright. We spread a blanket under the oaks at Eagle Creek again, sharing sandwiches and stories. She talked about how her parents' accident had forced her to grow up fast, but their legacy, the house, the investments, had been her safety net, allowing her to pour energy into her photography without the grind. I opened up more about Emily, how walking in on her and her ex had shattered my illusions, but also taught me to value honesty above all. Laura squeezed my hand. "That past doesn't define you, Lucas. Look at what you're building now." In that moment, with the sun setting behind us, I realized I was falling for her. Hard. We started blending our worlds. I took her to meet my crew at the shop where they ribbed me about finally having a +1. She introduced me to her freelance buddies at a local art fair where her photos stole the show. One rainy afternoon, we holed up in her bungalow, baking cookies from her mom's old recipe book. Flour dusted our noses as we laughed, and when a batch burned, we just ate the good ones, curled up with hot cocoa. "This is what home feels like," she murmured, and I pulled her into a hug, feeling the pieces of my life click into place. By Thanksgiving, we were official. I drove up to Michigan to introduce her to my folks. Dad grilled her on camera settings. Mom shared gardening secrets over pie. Laura fit right in, her warmth matching theirs. Back in Elmwood, we hosted a small dinner for neighbors, toasting to new beginnings. As snow dusted the streets in December, we'd walk hand in hand, planning trips. A weekend in Chicago for old time's sake, maybe the Smokies for her shoots. Looking back, it started with those borrowed shears, but it grew into shared dreams and quiet support. Me, the mechanic piecing together a life after divorce, and Laura, the artist finding light after loss, secure in what her parents left behind. We turned 2 solo houses into one shared story, proving that sometimes the best fixes aren't with tools, but with time and open hearts.